Thank you all for coming out tonight. My name is Julia. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm on the events team here at Books Are Magic. Before we get started tonight, I wanted to share just a few quick logistics. First off, we do ask that you keep your mask on at all times while at the event. We'll be doing a hand-raised audience Q&A towards the end of the night, so start thinking of questions to ask and hang on to them. At the end of the talk, Stephen is going to be signing and personalizing books at the desk all the way at the back of the store. We also will have additional books available to purchase up at the register where you came in. And if you're joining us virtually on the YouTube live stream, we'd love for you to buy a copy of And They Lived online, and you can use the link in the live stream description to do so. Okay, with all of that in mind, I'm very excited to introduce Stephen Salvatore and David Levithan, who are here tonight celebrating the release of Stephen's new novel, And They Lived. In this, go ahead. In this book, we meet Chase Arthur, a college freshman and aspiring animator who dreams of finding his own Disney fairy tale ending. While grappling with both gender questions and body dysphoria, Chase meets Jack, and the chemistry between them is undeniable. What follows is a beautiful and emotional story about finding love, both with others and within yourself. Perfectly blending joy and healing, And They Lived is a queer romance that Stephen aptly dedicates to every queer person who grew up never seeing themselves in fairy tales, but still dreamed of being swept off their feet in a Technicolor love story. This book gives me so much hope for a reality in which every young queer person gets a happy ending just like Chase's. Stephen Salvatore is a gay, genderqueer author, writing professor, Mariah Carey Lamb, and Star Wars fanatic. They hold an MFA in creative writing from the New School. They currently live in Peekskill, New York, with their amazingly patient husband, whose name is also Steve. They are the author of Can't Take That Away and They Lived, and also co-founder of the Pride Book Festival. You can find Stephen at stephensalvatore.com, on Twitter at StephenSSWrites, or on Instagram at StephenSalvatoreBooks. And as mentioned, Stephen is joined in conversation tonight by David Levithan. When not writing during spare hours on weekends, David is editorial director at Scholastic and the founding editor of the Push imprint, which is devoted to finding new voices and new authors in teen literature. His acclaimed novels, Boy Meets Boy and The Realm of Possibility, started as stories he wrote for his friends for Valentine's Day, something he's done for the past 22 years and counting, that turned themselves into teen novels. He's often asked if the book is a work of fantasy or a work of reality, and the answer is right down the middle. It's about where we're going and where we should be. So, without further delay, everyone please give a very warm welcome to Stephen and David.
You made it. In-person book reading.
Yeah.
Wild. Wild. All right, so first we're going to do the embarrassing thing, so I want a shot of you with the audience. They're all going to take pictures, and you're going to see yourselves, but I want this. So turn around, bright eyes. All right, everybody. Look really happy for him. Excellent. All right, so I am so honored to be here for their second book, which I loved, And They Lived. And to talk a little bit about it, but I think we're going to start with a reading.
Yeah.
And then just give you a taste. And then I'm going to ask such probing questions. Like, you're going to leave here being like, wow, I know Stephen so much better. Which Stephen it's going to be, we'll see. And then, again, hopefully you all will be thinking of your own masterful questions for when the time comes to open up for Q&A, because there's always that awkward moment when we ask for questions and nobody raises their hand. I'm now denying that moment. You will have questions. There we go. All right, set the scene.
Okay, so when we meet these characters, Chase and Jack, the central romance of the book, they just got back from a free concert at a school, a university nearby. Chase just puts his roommate, who is drunk, to bed, and Jack does not want to end the night just yet. So David's going to be playing the role of Jack in this. He doesn't tell me where we're going, but I follow him as we make our way across the dark campus. A few street lamps along the walkways shine little spotlights for us, and when he walks under one, I study the way the golden blonde hairs on the back of his head swirl into a cowlick. I live for it every time we emerge from the darkness. Without warning, he strays from the concrete onto a small, grassy hill and plops dead center. He motions for me to join him.
We're already soaked from the show.
My sneakers squish. I lift one shoe. Well, these are probably trash anyway.
Lose them.
He pops his off one at a time and pulls at his socks until they peel away with a schlocky sound, and I follow suit. He must notice my horrified face when my bare feet dig into the muddy grass.
Not a nature person?
Oh, me? I love nature. I offer a pained smile. It's textures I take issue with. Jack grins as he looks up toward the night sky. The clouds have started to dissipate like someone is pulling back a curtain to reveal the stars shining so bright above us.
You know what I love?
He asks, and I hum, intently waiting on his answer.
That no matter what is happening on this planet, rain, storms, whatever,
He points up.
that is always there on the other side of the clouds.
Ah, you're a stargazer,
Aren't
I say.
you?
What do you mean?
You're an artist, so you always see beyond what's right in front of you, thinking about possibility, the unknown.
He says.
He turns the page. I know that when I write, I'm constantly thinking about the infinite ways a story can go.
I lie back on the grass and shiver. Fuck, it feels like the temperature is dropping by the minute. I'll probably wake up tomorrow with a cold or something. But I don't care. I don't want this to end. Sometimes that trips me up. If there are so many possibilities when I create something, how do I know if I'm choosing the right storyline? Jack lies back until we're elbow to elbow.
I like that I can talk about this stuff with someone. Callum doesn't get it.
People who aren't artists don't, I say, a little annoyed that he's bringing up his friend right now.
Yeah,
He turns to face me.
you're thinking too much. Good stories let their characters show their creators who they are.
I can't help but think about Professor McPherson's assignment and how much is riding on getting this mentorship at the end of the semester, yet I have zero ideas.
Remember at the show earlier when the strobe lights were streaming over the crowd and it looked like lightning?
He asks.
And I grabbed it and tossed it to you, and you just went along with it?
Yeah, I say.
How'd you know what to do?
Instinct, I guess. When Jack smiles, it's heavy and the edges around his eyes crinkle. I could drown in the moonlight blue pools of his irises.
There's your answer.
We let that sit in the air between us for a while. The stars are so bright here, I say, finally, my voice airy like a gentle whisper.
Yeah, you can really see the dippers when the sky is clear.
Where? I ask. I don't think I've ever seen them.
See that bright star straight ahead?
He sits up, and I follow. He moves in impossibly close. His hot cheek grazes mine. I smell him, an earthly mix of sweat and cologne, and my entire body aches.
Follow my hand to the tip of my finger. See that star? Trace it with me.
His finger outlines the geometric ladle. That's it? I ask excitedly. That's the Big Dipper? He laughs.
Sure is.
For a moment, everything is suspended, like the stars in the endless void above us. If I wanted to, I could reach out and grab the Big Dipper and pull it close, hold it to my chest, carry it with me wherever I go, or climb inside its basin and peer out at the world below, at this, us, right now. Then he turns, and we're close, so close that our noses almost touch. I hold my breath, and my heartbeat increases as his eyes search mine. Then he pulls back, returns to his position in the grass, and I release a ragged breath, missing my chance. I guess that's the thing about stars. They might always be there, stuck in the same fabric that lines the sky, but they will always be out of reach. Jack reminds me of a star. No, Apollo, Greek god of the sun. How the world seems brighter, lighter with him in it. the way his words flow like poetry. Gods, like stars, are untouchable. If Jack is Apollo, I guess that makes me Icarus, who flies too close to the sun.
What do you think comes first?
Jack asks.
Thunder or lightning?
Without thinking, I say, lightning, always. I've spent many stormy nights with Taylor outside watching and listening to the cracks in the sky during storms. The way the air goes silent always enraptured me, like somehow all the people and all the cars and all the noise just stopped, and there was this swell of silence, the breath just before the downpour.
Actually,
Jack says.
Thunder and lightning happen at the same time, but light travels faster than sound. That's why we see lightning before we hear thunder.
The thunder chases the lightning, I say. Mom always told me to hold my breath and count after the lightning strike, and however many seconds it took to hear the thunder, that's how far away the storm was. I hold my breath and count. Jack does the same. We move closer, wrapped in a sudden squall, so close that I can hear Jack's heartbeat, or maybe it's my own. Jack talks first, and I exhale.
It sounds like an old school fable.
He sits upright and gets cross-legged as if he's readying himself to tell a story.
Lightning and thunder, who live high in the clouds, chasing each other, longing to find one another. Every so often they collide. That's when the boom happens.
He smiles his crinkly smile, and his one dimple creases. What if thunder and lightning are lovers? I suggest. And the booms happen because thunder cries when he realizes he missed catching lightning again. I pause and look up at the sky, remembering the way Jack captured lightning in his hands and passed it to me at the show, the way the ground shook and the earth moved and we became something else entirely. Ever wonder why we see something before we hear it? I ask, not entirely sure we're still talking about lightning or thunder or something else. He shrugs.
Or feel something before we see it, like Lichtenberg figures.
Huh? My face crinkles in confusion. He holds out both hands. With his right, his fingers brush his left palm and spider out.
Lichtenberg figures are the tattooed marks that appear on the skin after being struck.
His voice shifts mid-thought to something brighter.
By lightning.
He takes out his phone, pulls up the Notes app, and starts furiously typing away. I try to peer at the screen, but he tilts it out of view. When he's done, Jack holds the phone to his chest.
Sorry, I was inspired.
Can I read it?
Really? You'd want to?
Of course I would. He nods slowly.
Okay, I trust you. It's short.
He says, almost apologizing.
Give me your number and I'll text it. But you have to wait until you're in your dorm to read it.
I do the cross my heart and hope to die sign across my chest as I give him my number. Immediately, my phone vibrates. It takes every ounce of strength not to look at it. When I'm home, I don't even peel off my wet clothes before pulling up Jack's message.
Everyone says it's lucky to be struck by lightning. No one tells you how to live once you've been struck. All I know is that it is impossible to harness.
The bright phone screen is a beacon in my hands. Jack's message is the light that spreads through my body like lightning. Where's my Mariah fan? It was a lot.
I'm so happy you chose that passage.
I love that passage. That was one of my favorite passages to write.
And it spreads throughout the whole book in very interesting ways. I should probably use the mic. All right. So you actually set me up beautifully for my first question.
Oh, I love that.
So I'm going to quote you. Good stories let their characters show their creators who they are. So Chase had a journey to show you
Yes.
who they were.
Yes.
So could you talk a little bit? I was gobsmacked. I told you when I read the acknowledgments at the end to know this book seems fully conceived. It is what it is, and I can't imagine that it was ever anything else. But apparently, it was many other things before it took this form. So could you talk about that and why you stuck with Chase?
So Chase was a character that I invented in my head when I was like 15 years old, just to sort of like get through the day. Chase was somebody that I could sort of like hide behind. I don't want to use the word like imaginary friend, but like let's be real, because he was somebody that like talked to me and I don't know, just allowed me to like see myself as something more than who I was. And when I started writing, his story was the first that I wanted to tell. I wanted to sort of live through this character. So I wrote the first version of Chase's story when I was a sophomore in college back in 2006, which is a really long time ago. And it was horrible. Chase was straight, and if anybody here,
Absolutely.
horrible. It's really the worst thing you could give to somebody. Yeah, I know. It's really terrible. We should ban straight books. I'm done with them. But it was. I wasn't really ready to acknowledge Chase's story, so I wrote him as a straight character who, if you've read Can't Take That Away, was originally in love with the Joey character from Can't Take That Away, and I plucked her and I put her into Can't Take That Away when I dismantled that book.
So you can take that away.
Yes, there are things you can take away. Yes. And that's the lesson. Thank you so much for coming. But I just learned that like through every iteration of his story, I was only going to get it right when I was able to fully realize who I was, because Chase is me in so many ways. And so when I dismantled that story and I started writing again his story when I was in the new school in 2009, 2010, it was a coming out story, and it was full of, traumatic coming out experience things. And I still wasn't fully grasping what his story was, so it wasn't landing. And I had to scrap it and start over so many times. But I wouldn't let him die. I could not let him go. No matter what, even when friends were telling me, like, it's time, I think, to move on to something else, maybe. So when I moved on to Can't Take That Away, and that was nice. But then after Can't Take That Away sold, I was like, you know what, I have to revisit Chase's story. He's pulling at me. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be this romance between Chase and Jack. And so I just sat down and just literally from start to finish in like 44 days, just got pretty much close to this version. There really wasn't a lot of heavy edits on this. And so, I don't know, I just chalk it up to when the story was right, it came. So yeah.
Well, I think what's interesting is while reading it, it struck me that you were not holding back. That it is, I think, especially as queer writers, there's times, especially when you're working on your first book, there is sort of still that voice in your head saying, oh, can I say this? Can I not say this? Is it good for the gays? Is it bad for the gays? Is my grandmother going to read this? And you do, like, part of sort of taking your first book out and writing it and then taking it out into the world is facing up to that and being like, oh, okay, this story's out there, I'm out there with it. And I find that it tends to embolden the second books. And so I'm curious, did you feel sort of in that 44 days, like, were there things that you held back, or did you really just put everything into this book that you had to give it?
I think I just put everything into it. My mindset was, okay, I sold a book. Yay. Love Bloomsbury. Hi, Bloomsbury people. Really happy y'all are here. And so I was like, you know what? I have a 2-book deal. I need to have a second book. And I originally wrote, so my 3rd book that comes out next summer, I wrote that before And They Lived. But I don't know, there was something that I was holding that back. And They Lived just sort of, I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to write the book that I want to write. I'm not going to filter myself. And so the things that are in this book are the things that I've dealt with, my experiences, my view of the world. And I just wanted to be as honest as possible with that. It's, taking in the age demo and the genre, conventions and all that.
Yes, college life was a little different in 2006 than it is today, isn't it?
Just a little
Just a little bit. There's a really interesting tension in the book, which I love, between fantasy and reality. Chase is studying to be basically a Disney animator, worships Disney. Maybe not to the extent of you worshiping Mariah Carey, but there is a worship going on there. But at the same time, what I loved is at first it sort of sets it up, and I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be it's a rom-com, it's going to be like Disney-esque, but then reality does come in, and there is a tension throughout. So could you talk about why you did construct the book that way? There is a story within the story, which I think you should probably talk a little bit about, but how did you, when writing it, weigh sort of wanting to talk about sort of the romance tropes, and the characters are very conscious of tropes within this book and actually discuss them, but at the same time hewing to the reality of what Chase's life would be like in this situation?
So the story within a story, there is a sort of like Brothers Grimm style original fairy tale that's called The Prince Who Captured Lightning, that's sort of woven into the narrative in 4 distinct parts that Chase is animating throughout the book. And as the story comes together, it sort of reflects Chase's journey and what he's discovering, and like right after we leave off with the scene that I just read, he comes up with the very first part of it. And it's about thunder and lightning, who are these sky titans, and this prince and this knight who meet each other, and there's a spark, like a literal spark, that each of them holds in their hands. And as I was exploring that element of it, I was really conscious of the fact that I did not have good or any representation growing up as a kid. I was obsessed with Disney fairy tales. All I did was, watch Disney movies, and I wanted to be an animator, and I wanted to do all of these things that Chase is doing in the book. But I also wanted to fall in love. And I didn't think that that was ever something that was in the cards for me. As a gay person, as a queer person, you just don't think that that is something, well, back in the day. Now things are a little bit different. But when I was growing up, it just didn't feel like that was something that I was able to get. And so I wanted to have Chase live in this fairy tale world to sort of get the fairy tale that he deserves. But then also sort of contrast that with the very real reality. And the reality is that Chase is out, Chase is in school, he knows who he is. And he meets this guy, Jack's gay, but he's not out. And he comes from kind of a conservative-ish background, and he is open to Chase, but only so far, only so much. And so the reality of that sort of hits Chase in the back third. And I think that's a very real thing for queer people. When you start seeing somebody who's not out of the closet, there's a whole luggage carousel full of shit that comes along with getting involved with somebody who is not quite out yet. And it's funny because it's like you're not supposed to read the comments, but it's like oh, there's this, why isn't Jack out and blah blah blah, and I'm like, listen, people aren't out. I'm sorry, not everybody is out. Not everybody can physically be out. Right? People aren't safe, and so or don't feel safe, or whatever the reason may be. Maybe they just aren't ready to say it, and that's okay. And it gets me angry when people are mad at Jack. Don't be mad at Jack because he's in the closet. Be mad at fucking society because they put him in a closet to begin with. And so, these are the things that, I want people to really look at when they're reading the book. It's Chase and Jack are real people. And so that was something, I wanted to pair that with the fairy tale part of it because, that's part of falling in love as a queer person.
So if I want to tell the audience who to be mad at, but I'm realizing that's full of spoilers. There are plenty of people to be mad at within this book at various junctures.
Yes.
But no, another thing that it was interesting, because again, queer tropes come up a lot, and the whole idea of queering stories. And I'll admit at first I was like, well, in terms of YA, like we're queering things all the time now, and it is so normalized that it does feel like, okay, we've gotten that barrier. And I thought it was actually quite smart to sort of bring the Disney aspect of it, because that actually kept making me realize, well, yes, in some parts of literature, in some parts of entertainment, the queering has happened. But there are still these large swaths where it hasn't happened. And Disney movies, or just movies in general, there are certain areas where the tropes are still monumentally strong. And so I'm going to ask you the question I get a lot, but about specifically writing YA. And this book does it's college, it straddles YA, new adult. If you're an adult, you will enjoy it just as much as a 16-year-old will, and vice versa. But sort of there is usually a part of sort of a mission to write YA, and sort of how does that inform sort of your choices for what you choose to write?
So I'm going to be brutally honest and say that the YA books that I have written, that I've sold, Can't Take That Away, and They Lived, and my third book that comes out next summer, really was me exploring myself as a young person and getting to write myself. So very, very selfish. But I'm okay with admitting that. I hope young people pick up my books and say, oh, I see myself here. But spoiler alert, I wrote for myself. It's just a great happy perk that Bloomsbury decided to give me money for it. Like, that's great. We love that. And I think that was something, I was attracted to writing children's lit when I was an undergrad, because I took a class and I didn't know that it was an actual genre. That I knew that, books for teens and books for young people existed, absolutely, but I didn't think that it was this like age demo that I could actually write for, because at the time I was writing nonfiction, which did not go over very well. But I just took to it because of the amount of emotions and honestly the amount of emotional intelligence that's in young adult books, because I find them to be way more self-aware and aware in general than quote-unquote adult fiction. I love me some adult fiction, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I just find it to be just so much more brutally honest in a way that just like rips my chest open. So that sort of is what drew me to it, to keep trying to get my story right, and fictionalize it, because everything is fictional. If there's any similarities between these characters and real people, it's just a coincidence.
Really people in this room who might sue if we said that it was them. All right, I did promise that there would be audience questions, and I also promised that people would raise their hand pretty much immediately when I said there were going to be audience questions. So that really is the prompt, which I'm speaking through right now. So like in about 30 seconds, I'm going to ask you questions, and there are going to be plenty of hands, because we know you. We know that you didn't ask a question. You have a responsibility. So are there, any questions? Thank you.
All right. If this book was a Mariah Carey song, what would it be?
Oh, okay, so that's very difficult, because I want to get myself in trouble with the Queen, but I didn't listen to any of her music while I was writing this book. It just didn't fit the vibe.
So that's why it took you 44 days. You were in withdrawal. You're like, I gotta finish this book. So
I gotta get back.
Mariah.
I gotta get back to Mariah. This is too much. Okay, so I guess if it was a Mariah song, I would have to say "Underneath the Stars," which is probably very on theme with the book. But really, the soundtrack to the book was Years and Years. If anybody knows them, queer band. Listen to the song "Shine." It encapsulates the entirety of the book, I think.
Awesome.
Good question.
Yes.
Okay. What Disney movie or traditional fairy tale would you love to see gayified?
All of them? Okay, all right, okay, so, okay, Aladdin, because Aladdin was my sexual awakening.
I think she means one that isn't already gay.
Yeah, that's true. And I did marry my own Aladdin, so, you know, there's that we can unpack. But maybe The Little Mermaid, and because it's already gay, Ursula is just the gayest ever, and Eric he's not in love with Ariel. He just wants her voice, honey. Like, he's the first diva worshiper. Definitely The Little Mermaid. So I'm gonna plug someone's book, someone who I love dearly, Jason June. Their next book, Out of the Blue, is coming out May something. I think JJ might be watching. I don't know. But their book, Out of the Blue, comes out like May 25th or something, if that's a Tuesday. But very splash Little Mermaid sort of vibes. So, you know.
We're working on it, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
If Carrie and Chase were to meet, where would they cross paths, and what would the interaction be like?
Ooh, okay, I secretly have thought of this.
The Salvatore universe.
Yes, let's build it out like the Simon verse. I thought maybe like, so the main character in my third book is a filmmaker. So I was thinking like, okay, what is a filmmaker, a singer, and an animator? Like, what's the common ground there? And I'm like, oh, well, a filmmaker and an animator, they're gonna make a film together, and then Carrie's gonna sing the songs. So that's the world I came up with. And storyline plot makes no sense, but it's in my head. So.
I'm cracking myself up because I realized that a better joke would have been to say it's the Steven universe. Anyway. Next question.
Missed opportunities.
You haven't run dry already.
Oh, come on.
Yes.
Do you have a favorite side character from Anime List?
Yes. Benny. 100,000% Benny. I love him so much. He is Chase's hysterical gay roommate. And by hysterical, I mean that in every sense of the word. He's funny, but he's also ridiculous and completely... He's the physical embodiment of like that animated wisecracking side character, like the little squirrel or something that's on your shoulder that's just like saying gay shit all the time. And also teaching my main character how to bottom. So sorry, there's no kids here. Yes, Jacob.
Well, on that, I'm curious.
On that? Really?
Topic.
On that?
Okay, this is truly a gay event.
I'm curious because I know you said that this has been kind of advertised as like a sex positive queer YA. So did you want to write that as sex positive, or did that, as you know, the other characters kind of just came to you? Was that something that just came along with that?
You don't want to take that one? No.
Yeah. You saw what you did. What I
wanted to do was show Chase and Jack exploring sex for the first time. And with that, as a gay person comes a whole lot of stuff that they just don't teach you in sex ed, and you just sort of have to find out by trial and error, or porn. Which is just horrible representation. We love porn.
Who's the we? All the times to start speaking universally.
We love and support sex workers. That's where we're at with that. But you just can't learn realistic sex from watching porn. And so it was really important for me to establish the Chase and Benny relationship as purely platonic, but Benny is experienced. And so he's like, okay, honey, come on, sit down. We're going to teach you how to buy. Here's a pamphlet. Let me show you what you need to do. Here's some condoms. Just practice safe sex, but here's what you need to do to prepare yourself. And that was really important for me to write because I wanted that to come off as realistic as possible within the conventions of the genre and the age demo. But as far as like labeling it sex positive, quite frankly, that was just a selling point. Like, it is sex positive, yes, but you know, I also want people to buy the book, so I have to say it's sex positive. But like, there's gay sex in the book, so, and I think it's realistic. So if you say that that's sex positive, then awesome, because there's no sex shaming, and there's a lot of beauty and love in the sex that's in the book, and I just think it's important to show that, because for whatever reason, sex is still considered taboo, especially for gay people, especially for queer people. And I don't know, sex is something that people do all the time. We should not shame people for it, and we should not ban books for it, and we should not censor people for that. So that's, did I answer that? We love that for me.
Other question.
Yes.
What do you think Chase's reaction would be to meeting Carrie? Like, would they click or just hate each other?
You know, I think that their personalities might be so similar that I think that Chase is a fully realized character, different from Carrie. But I think the way they think about things can be very similar. So I think that they would get along, but you know, when you meet people that are too similar to you, it just doesn't always work out. The personalities don't always mesh. I feel like they would be friends though. And I'm gonna make that canon.
Yes.
Kind of a left turn here, but really, without spoiling it, was impressed by the relationship between Chase and his dad and the nuance that goes into that, because it's not just, you know, straight up on the surface hard. It's kind of hard underneath the surface, and there's a lot of layers that go into that I think are relatable to queer people, and also in many other aspects of what Chase is struggling with. And I was just hoping you could talk a little bit about like the thought process behind that and what inspired you to sort of make that such a huge part of his growth opportunity, both dad and Chase.
So the thing with Chase's parents is that they are not together. They are divorced. And Chase doesn't have the best relationship with his dad. And it really sort of stems from a lot of microaggressions around Chase's weight. And it's a lot of like little things that when people say them, they don't realize how hurtful they are. And it's out of love that I'm saying these things to you, but it's like I don't know, get yourself to the gym, go on Weight Watchers, do all this shit to like get skinny or do whatever. And so it comes from that place of love, and I wanted to make sure that came through, that it wasn't just Chase's dad being an ass. And he's an ass. He's an absolute ass, and he says some shitty ass things. And so I wanted to sort of show that struggle of, you know, not only are Chase's parents divorced, and so he doesn't really have that like example of love, and so he turns to Disney movies and he turns to fairy tales, and these are the places where he learns about love, and so he wants to create his own so that he can have and experience that. But then he has this other layer to deal with. Like, there's this scene where he goes home, he takes Jack home and his best friend Ray home to his sister's birthday party. And his dad is there, and so we get to see that interaction between Chase and his dad. And we see like the father character really taking to Jack and just sort of really relating on that level, and Chase just sort of being there going, I don't trust this. Why are they connecting when we've never connected? And so like that's that little side plot that I wanted to, I think it was really important for me to explore that. And Chase's parents, he's at college. I know there's like this thing in YA, like parents don't exist. But like Chase is literally at college, so like his parents don't exist. Like they're in another world, they're in another universe. But I thought that was an important thing to weave into it. Yeah. I still don't know if I'm actually answering these questions.
You are,
I'm just
you are.
rambling. Right.
Yeah.
Can you
talk about your process in wanting to include therapy tidbits throughout?
Yes.
How does that make you feel?
So exploring mental health is really, really important to me. My husband's a therapist. But beyond that, going to therapy was probably the best thing that I ever did for myself. And so it was really important. If Chase is dealing with these big things, like trying to accept his body as a thick boy, thick and juicy, and if he's trying to accept himself, and he's also dealing with his love for Jack, and Jack isn't out yet, and that creates conflict. And he's dealing with his dad and his relationship with his dad, and he's dealing with like all of these other things that are sort of like mounting up, trying to, as a non-binary person, do I want to use he, him? Do I want to use they, them? And for Chase, he uses he, him, and that's what he's comfortable with. But he feels like he has to justify that, which to me is just, that's what queer people do. We spend all fucking day, every day, all of our entire lives justifying who we are to ourselves so that we can justify that to the rest of the world as if we have to justify ourselves. And I'm like, if this bitch is dealing with all of this stuff, like, he needs to go to therapy. He needs to be able to process that. And so, like, that was something that as I was, at the beginning of the book, you get this little tidbit that Chase was in therapy when he was in high school, but now he's in college, so that relationship no longer exists because he's in a new setting. And so his mom is like, are you going to find somebody? And Chase is like, I'm going to do it. And so he doesn't really do it until things kind of blow up for him. And it sort of forces him to get into therapy. And it was important. There's 2 therapy scenes in the book, so it's not like Can't Take That Away where there's sort of more scattered throughout. But it was important for me to explore what healing could look like. And so, like, I had to pack a lot into those two scenes. And like my husband read those scenes, I was like, put your therapist hat on, please read these for me. And he's like, they cover a lot of ground in 2 like, this is more like 10 sessions, and I'm like, I don't have 10 sessions worth of pages to write this. Like, is this good or not? He's like, it's fiction, so sure. I was like, I had to do what I had to do with it, but so I tried to like get in what I could there. But exploring that on the pages is always important to me in some capacity.
How much did he charge you for that consultation?
I'm still paying that off. So.
All right, there's another question there. Yeah.
So this is set in college, and you've written a book set in high school, and like the majority of YA is set in high school. So I just wondered, sort of like, what was appealing about setting it in college, and did you hesitate at all?
Because there's really not a lot of college YA. It's very, 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 very select handful. I don't know what I'm saying right now.
Handful.
It's Swedish. I love that. That's great. That's the title of my next book. So I thought about that, and I was like, you know what? I can't do the things that I want to do with this book if I set it in high school. Chase would have a curfew. He lives at home. How's he gonna explore sexy time with Jack if, and there are ways, but I really, the main thing, I know, I'm like, everything's back to sex, but really the main thing is I wanted Chase to be able to decide what he does, where he goes. He's sort of the master of his own fate here. This is the first time that he's like, I'm an adult, I have to go to class, I have to do all these things. And when you're in high school, like, you kind of have your parents or guardians to be like, school starts at 7:30, you have to be on the bus, and you have to make sure you eat your Pop-Tarts and come home and do your homework, and are you going out this late? When you make sure you call me. And I was like, I don't want any of that shit, because I don't always enjoy YA books where, like, the home life is shown but the parents aren't. So I'm like, where are your parents? Like, aren't they? Like, my mom was like hovering A lot. And like I came from like a loud Italian family who like they're probably all watching. Hi guys. They hovered. Like we were all very close, and like if I went somewhere, like my aunt would be like, "Where are you going?" So like that was important for me to like show Chase getting to like make his own decisions and do his own thing.
This explains why you missed the parents. Not all of us had quite that experience.
That is true. That's true.
All right, I think we've time for one more, and then we're gonna wrap up. All right, so bring it on home.
Oh, thank you. I'm curious about the process of writing about, like as you said, about that character and how the identity of fatness intersects with other identities explored in the book.
Yeah, I think so. This is something that I talk to my husband a lot about as a therapist, and just sort of like looking at Chase's gender identity, who he is as a non-binary person, and he doesn't experience gender dysphoria at all. He doesn't experience body dysphoria. He experienced body dysmorphia, which basically as through my research and people that I've talked to, and my own experiences, like body dysmorphia is something that I've suffered from since I was in high school. Like when I would look, and still to this day, like when I look in the mirror, I don't see what you all see, and I don't know what the hell y'all see, but I don't see that. I see something horrible. I see something like massive, and I was very overweight, morbidly obese for a really long time. And so that sort of like, and my weight fluctuated, and I crash dieted, and I did horrible things to my body, just because I didn't love myself. So I treated my body really, really badly. And so that was something that I wanted to explore, because that was something that I experienced. And so I wanted that to be a journey for Chase, where, his father would say, these very awful microaggressions about his body and, how big he was. And, Chase suffering from disordered eating, and sort of recovering from that, because I think it's an ongoing battle. And so I just wanted to explore that part of it, and I think that body dysmorphia is something that so many queer people suffer from, especially gay men. There's just, and it's something that people don't talk about that often either, because, you just see all of these like rippled abs all the time, everywhere, and like, okay, we love abs, but like, that's not all that realistic. But it's like, how do I live up to these standards, these beauty standards that exist? And so like Chase is battling all of these things, but for Chase, they were separate things. So it's like making sure that all those threads are there, but it's not really all tied together, but loosely tied together. So that was an interesting balancing act as I was going through and writing and revising and all of that.
Thank you. So again, I think we are going to wrap up for the signing. One question I refuse to ask you, because I think everybody should read the book and find out, is the derivation of the title. I love this title so much, and I love the explanation of it in the book, so you all need to read the book for the... But I also love it because a lot of my friends, when I've said, oh, I'm doing this book event, it's called And They Lived, and they're just so happy. They're like, yes, I want a book where they live. And I think it is great because the book, even though, again, it does mix the fantasy and the reality perfectly, you do have that promise from the get-go that you are in responsible hands and that you are going to be taken to a place where they live. And again, at this moment in time, I am grateful for that to no end, and just for the message of the book, again, on all of the levels that we've discussed. So
Thank you.
it really is amazing that it's here. It is an amazing book. You should buy multiple copies. I don't even know what St. Patrick's Day is the next holiday coming up. Like, what a perfect St. Patrick's Day.
Yes.
And you should also buy them all here tonight because, again, it is amazing that Books Are Magic is having events like this again in person and live streamed. And so the way to continue doing these and to support them is to buy as many books as possible. We'd love it if it's our books, But please, just, there's so many good books in this store. They're really smart people when they pick their books. So please buy a lot. The registers will be open. And I believe now we're going to segue to the signing and cupcakes portion.
Yeah.
I just want to say really quickly, thank you, David, because this is very much a full circle moment. Like, my first book launch in New York was I was just telling you, Love is the Higher Law, when that came out in like 2009, and that book and Boy Meets Boy and all of your books really just changed my life and my trajectory. So this is just a very emotional moment for me, and I'm just really grateful that you're able to do this. So thank you. And like, buy all of David's books. Okay, well there's a lot of them. So like maybe like one at a time. But buy them all.
But buying them all would really support the store.
Yes, we love that. Thank you.
Okay, I've just got a few quick announcements before I let everyone loose. As a reminder, Stephen is going to be signing at that back desk. So wait a moment to approach them until they've gotten settled, but then you can go ahead and line up. As David teased, we do have additional copies of And They Lived at the front where you checked in, as well as Stephen's first book, Can't Take That Away, and some of David's backlists. For those of you still on YouTube, you can find the link to purchase books in the YouTube description. For those of us who are in store with us, we ask that you please make your way downstairs once you've purchased your copies, so that our staff can begin to break down the space. And you will be able to exit through that back door as well. As you're headed out, please feel welcome to take a cupcake to eat once you're outside. And that's all from me. So thank you again, everyone, and let's give these two one last round of applause. We're just gonna turn off the YouTube.